You're live.
Was that a live?
You're live. Boy, what a somber group this morning.
It was a late night.
I made a major mistake. What'd you do? I forgot.
Okay, now you can go.
Hi, my name is Kathy and I'm a Scratchboard addict. All right, well, I guess I'll talk a little bit about how I do layout because a bunch of people were asking before. A lot of you guys know that I do a lot in Photoshop as a photographer. I do a lot of editing in Photoshop. I do a lot of layout in Photoshop. I do a lot of compositional layout in Photoshop. I'm like, hey, what if I add this element, that element? And I speak really fast, so apologies to everyone. And I also do a lot as far as manipulating contrast and the way that the image will appear. I don't just say, oh, it's photo, turn it into black and white, and that's how I'm going to go with it. I do a lot of darkening this, lightening that to up the contrast on my images. And I do a lot of work with eyes if it's a close-up piece like the snow leopard that I will be doing. Not the whole thing, sorry, but...
Rip off.
Rip off.
I want a rebate.
So in this particular image, I should have brought a before and after. I almost brought my laptop just to show some of the Photoshop stuff, but my camera bag already weighs about 40 pounds and I didn't want to carry the laptop on also. But I went in and lightened all of the lighter areas on the eyes, and I go in and actually darken the contrast on the darkest part of the eyes, and it just makes them come alive essentially. I believe in this particular photo there were catch lights in both of the eyes, but one of the catch lights was kind of funky looking because it was reflecting cage from where the snow leopard was at. So I went in and touched up the catch lights, which is the white highlight on the top part of the eye also. And as I was telling people yesterday, this particular snow leopard is actually cross-eyed. It was a cub that was born at the Denver Zoo, and he had a lazy eye that went like way off to the side. So I have all these great photos of him stalking towards me, and he's got the crazy eye going off here. So in Photoshop, I went in and made him look like a normal snow leopard without a lazy eye. So, I don't know, so much of what I do, like with fur and stuff, is just intuitive. I don't understand how what I'm doing is any different than what anybody else is doing for fur. And people, what are you doing? What are you doing? And they're on lines, it's furs. I don't even know how to show people what I do, but I tend to work generally with my lightest areas first. In this particular image, there's not like one area that really stands out as the lightest part, but I guess we'll tackle some of this hair where there's some transitions down towards the bottom part of the eye, because there's some interesting transitions there. And since we're doing an eye, also eventually we'll jump in there. So I don't even know how to explain what I do. I mean, it's just lines. So how do we explain that? But
Did you usually start with the eyes?
I don't really. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Not necessarily. I just jump in wherever it strikes me as, hey, that's the place I want to start. So actually, I usually don't do eyes very, very first. I do tend to do them probably the first half of the board. But I pay a lot of attention to fur direction because when you're, especially if you're doing close-ups, but even just when you're working in general, fur direction on an animal is imperative to making it look correct. If you do, fur isn't crosshatched, fur is lines. Fur has a direction that it flows. There's areas where it overlaps, it isn't exactly parallel, but fur has a general direction. So in the case of this image, here I'll put this up where you can kind of zoom in on this area. You'll be able to see that the fur has a very distinct direction that it's going to travel. I only got 3 cameras. I feel like, am I missing somebody back here? And so I just start by laying out general lines, and I don't use a lot of pressure initially. I work pretty light in the general direction that my fur is going to travel. And it's a lot of just little tiny lines, just like Scratchboard is, and come back in. Because fur overlaps, it is layers. It isn't one layer of fur. You have fur that goes a lot of different directions within that general plane of movement and directional hairs.
You should act differently though with the blade, like you're cutting it kind of.
I use it
with that
kind of the side.
edge.
I do it sideways. Well, I mean, I move it around to where I can find the sharp edge on my blade. This is a brand new blade because I put it in specifically like, hey, I'm starting a new board and I want a new blade. And unfortunately, when I'm working on Scratchboards, a lot of times I'm up like this, working on the detail. And I'm actually going to turn because the window is, my hand is kind of obscuring. Sorry, Diana, if I cut off your view. But And as I'm building up the layers, I'm going to gradually add in some slight hairs that have a little bit more pressure, which will add in some lighter hairs compared to the ones that are underneath. This is hard for me because I really do work up close. I'm like, okay, I gotta put it where they can see it. So right here on my image, I have a really dramatic transition in the fur direction between the hair that's coming away from the eye and the hair that's coming down from the eye. And you get a real interesting shadow line in there that helps me define where that hair change is. But understanding that hair, again, is not perfectly parallel, but some of these hairs are actually going to cross over some of these hairs. So I'll go ahead and start to put this directional hair in, but I'm going to probably come back and add some of these hairs over the top of it.
If you're doing coarser hairs, do you use a different blade, or do you use?
It depends how coarse I'm going. I could do this entire image without an X-Acto. Well, the whiskers would be probably the thing that I would come in and use a coarser blade for, but everything else on here, and I would come back with a black marker and put those ones in. Everything else I can do in the X-Acto. And also understanding that not all hairs are straight. Sometimes hair, even on a straight-haired animal, hairs curve. In this case, these hairs actually do kind of make a circular motion. They're not full circular, but they have a bend to them.
Which transition areas, I think, really what makes the difference in how you handle those transition areas?
Yes, there's several things like that. And so much interest in the script.
In the guideline, I mean, my white lines that are drawn and are, you know, obviously guides, but, and I do tend to go over the top of them. They can be erased afterwards also. And I do tend to work one area pretty much to completion before, like, I'm not a person that puts in values all over my board and then comes back and dark lightens them and lightens them and lightens them. I'm a person that says, work in this area, I'm going to get it to where I like it. Work in that area, get to where I like it, and it works for me. So I don't know that there's a right or wrong way to do Scratchboard.
I don't think so. It's kind of like sometimes I add color before I'm through scratching too, you know. See what I need to do there, so.
And
To get the mood of the board.
Yeah.
you guys remember, obviously, my roping horse? Well, I couldn't find my black ink. Found out that spit works pretty good on Scratchboard for getting your shadows in. It's just water soluble enough that if you spit on your finger and smear it around, you can get that darker shadow in there. So the roping horse has got a lot of DNA.
We need cloner.
That's the greatest trick.
And it's free.
I just threw it over my mouth a little bit.
Kathy, do you use a magnifier at all?
Now,
No.
Got good eyes.
I do tend to, I mean, whether I'm working on a 5x7 or a
Yeah.
34x26, I do tend to blow my image up to about an 8x10 or roughly a size of a sheet of paper because it's easy to carry around and usually shows me enough detail. When I'm working either really small or really big, though, I do sometimes like, hey, you know, I need to see this area better, and I'll go in and, you know, this is an area I want a lot of attention and blow it up bigger just so I can see details more.
I know.
I'm so glad y'all hear that. I thought I brought it with me.
Kathy, would you use the black marker just for the line?
Yeah, putting whiskers or like, he's got little eyebrows that are gonna come up right here. I wouldn't try and leave those dark to scratch them in, so I couldn't leave a fine enough line to do that, and second of all, it wouldn't look natural because my scratches next to it would end up either, you know, hitting the